It is the GBNews Tavern time. We're open. It's Talking Pints. I'm joined by Stephen Machat, American entertainment mogul. Stephen, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
To GBNews and Talking Pints. Great to see you. Now, we're going to get into some of the stars that you've worked with over the years, but you kind of almost were born into a celebrity culture, weren't you? You know,
all the way.
All the way. Your father was involved as a lawyer in the entertainment industry, and you kind of got into that. And looking at the list of names, the people you've worked with, you know, Peter Gabriel, Electric Light Orchestra, Bobby Brown, Ozzy Osbourne, Snoop Dogg. Who didn't you work with? How do you get the trust of these people?
I attract them. I get into their heads. I understand them. They're dreamers. I'm a dreamer. And dreamers need people that believe in them and encourage them and basically perpetuate them to go do what they want to do. You give them the boundaries. You tell them you'll support them. Because you live in society. And if I'm telling you I'm going to put out romantic music, like when I had the band Soft Cell, you know, no one believed in that band. That took us 16 months to get that out, and that was in the early 80s. But you sit there and you encourage them, you get them to go do it, you get them to do it. You know, Ozzy Osbourne, when he was thrown out of Black Sabbath and we had the Blizzard of Oz, you know, my role was to just make sure it happened, to get the business money in, keep Jet Records rotating. But I believe in these artists, and I'll sit with the artist, I'll look them in the eyes like I'm looking at you. Yeah. I'll ask them where the song comes from, what are they seeing, what are they hearing, where do they want to go, who's your audience, what clothing you want to sell them, because you become a lifestyle. And if there's no culture, there's no life. And right now there is no culture. We're just sitting here.
How do these people, you know, because you meet some of these people when they're complete unknowns.
Yes.
And you think, okay, I'm going to back this guy or this girl. How do they cope with that fame when it suddenly happens?
A lot of them can't do it. A lot of them can't do it. You know, some of them, they sit and they become reclusive. You know, and if you study it, they have a few years where they're really motivated and they're like really into it. And you could just see, you know, like the Beatles, they had to break up. My father was part of that breakup. And because I talk a lot and I get in the middle and I'm a people person, you know, I was able to sit and watch it and I got educated by them. They showed me the Apple contracts. And I'm the guy that would get in the middle. I like people, and I will help you win. I do.
Well, I mean, I can see why people are attracted to that. Now, Leonard Cohen, you actually lived with Leonard Cohen for a bit, I understand. Is that right?
I more than lived with him. I mean, my father was his first manager, and Dad wanted Leonard Cohen to be his younger brother. My father loved Leonard. And what he loved about Leonard was that Leonard didn't care. And he kept looking because you don't understand. You're more like Leonard Cohen than maybe even Leonard Cohen's like Leonard Cohen. Because I don't care. I've traveled all over the world. I've lived everywhere. He was the wandering troubadour with his guitar. Yeah. I'm the wandering dreamer because I believe in a world of love and equality. You know, you give people what they need and you allow other people to go create. So it's 1977, and I had just left Vanderbilt Law School. And I took the California bar because California doesn't honor any other bar because most people want to live in California.
They did. They did.
Then. And then downstairs where I'm at right now, Florida's the same story. So I took the California bar, and then I wanted to go back to Tennessee to run for the U.S. Senate. I was going to go set it up. That was in my head. My father's like, you ain't doing that. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? And he says to me, just stay with Leonard. So, yeah, I lived with Leonard. We lived, you know, in what's called West L.A., and he's a trip. And we did the album called the Phil Spector, Leonard Cohen album, Don't Go Home With Your Heart On. And, I mean, he would do one thing and I would do the other, but in our own way, we were similar. He would sit there and tell, oh, woe is me when he was with girls, and I'd be looking at the energy from the girls, and I'm like, this is fantastic, you know? And so I got to know him really, really well. And I mean, even his songs are so misunderstood. Every time I sit there and I hear Hallelujah, all I could do is just laugh. Because it's not a religious song. It's not a revival song. It's a song, it's 1984, and I'm in New York, and he comes into the apartment, not the apartment, I'm saying it wrong, into the office. We're at 1501 Broadway, and he comes in, and he plops himself down on the chair, and I guess you're waiting for this, and he says, I did it. I go, what? And, you know, and my father comes running, what'd you do, Lenny? He goes, I finally got what I want. He says, I got her. And I'm like, you got who? And he said, who he got? And he says that I wrote a song about it. And he played
It's Hallelujah.
It's Hallelujah. And if you listen to those lyrics, you could hear it's about a man finally getting what he wanted. And he got it. And today when they sit there and they're doing their prayers and everything, I'm like, this is crazy. You know, and if I do nothing else, I just want
A much misunderstood song.
But they do it with other songs. It's like the Star Spangled Banner. That was an English theme song. I'll play it. And whatever his name is, Francis Scott, he wrote poetry, and he played the poetry to that song, you know?
Talking of music, and you know, politically, we're probably going to have a few disagreements, but it was really interesting.
Maybe not.
Ahead of 2020, Trump was going around the country doing these huge rallies, and music was a massive part of it. And this was the all-American. Everything's got to be American. You've got to manufacture in America. You've got to buy America. It's all got to be American. And all these rallies were held at airstrips because of COVID. So the plane would arrive and Phil Collins would start playing, and you know, the plane would land and David Bowie would be playing. And it really fascinated me that I thought, well, more of the people singing were actually British. Were actually British. So how close are the British and American music scenes?
I'll give it to you an answer. I worked with Phil Collins for many years.
Yep.
I did a few things with David Bowie. Here's the answer. Your country, and I feel English. I mean, if I had a second country, I'm an Anglophile.
Yeah.
I am. You know, I love your country because you believe in dreams, and you live a dream. You know, your Prince Andrew story, whatever, all those stories, you have a king and queen. Well, you have a queen and you're about to have a king.
Yeah.
You know, you believe in the dreams. You sell people dreams. You have your castles here. But at the same time, you take people when they're at school and you diagnose them. Are they creative eggs? And you encourage the humanities, you encourage their reading, you encourage them playing instruments, you encourage them to dream. And you set it up where, well, you're obviously not going to go do a work in a bank or something, maybe later. Let's get this done for you. And then they're sitting with their own kind, and when they're with their own kind, people who think and dream like that, they create. And when I was young, like Ray Davies was one of my heroes. Those songs in the 60s,
yeah.
I'm a few years older than you.
Yeah.
I mean, having him tell me what Waterloo Sunset meant, I mean, that was fantastic. Or Donovan telling me about Atlantis, and I'm wanting to know what the other 7 tribes were when he told me about the 5 tribes. You know, and he didn't know there's other 7. And in my new book called Taking Jesus Off the Cross, I finally figured it out.
Your 10th book. You're a prolific writer of books.
I can't stop. I love life. I've lived everywhere. And when I go somewhere, I made an album with the Dalai Lama. I made an album with the Communist Pope that the record labels wouldn't put out. I call him Communist Pope, the Pope from Poland, right, with solidarity. But I love life. And your country...
And you're here in this country now looking at sort of trying to get a rock and roll revival, as I understand it.
Rock and roll, what it is, became a generic term.
Yep.
But I see it differently. A rocker is someone that will shake the system.
Yep.
A roller, that is someone that has the courage to roll with what they rocked. Okay, so like Elvis Presley, who I had the pleasure of meeting, he wasn't rock and roll. He was R&B music, you know, and he just could wiggle his waist, and that was like, oh my God, look what he's doing. But that was the 50s. They banned jazz music. Jazz musician in those times, because they were sexy or whatever, that's rock and roll. What did the Beatles do? They came and they rocked the establishment, and they had the establishment doing it, and now they're all sirs. All of them came and they tried to beat England out of all their money with their tax schemes and everything.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
And then what they did is they gave them an access. Okay, if you put your money back in England, it's tax-free. I mean, I learned that game with a couple of the bands that I had in the 70s. I thought it was the most unfair thing in the world. I can't do that in America. America taxes you on citizenship or residency. You tax them here on residency. And then the Queen made them all sirs when they brought the money back here. But without that part, your country, you've created it, you're it. And I know right now that the system that we're living in, this social media, I know it's not right. Whatever it was when it was created was a means for you and I to communicate, and we could do it outside normal channels, but then it became the normal channels. And I'm a student of history. It's going to fall.
It's quite dehumanizing, isn't it, some of this stuff?
All the way.
Yeah.
if I go there and I say I'm looking for a record, that computer's telling me what to listen to. I'm against Spotify. It's too big for its own good. It stops creativity. I'm looking for an act that understands what I'm saying. I'm looking for an idealist. I'm looking for a group, a person, people that have a team, a dream. I'll become part of their team. Whatever I can do, they become my legacy.
So you're talent spotting.
Yeah, I'm looking for something that's just different. I have one band now in America that we're breaking called Rock's Revolt and the Velvets. And I want something here. I love your country. I love being here. And I know the answer's here. When I was young, my dad had a record label with Tony Stratton Smith, who's one of the most creative people I knew with Charisma Records. I'm listening to Lindisfarne, and Lindisfarne, I'm learning about the history of Scotland. Stuff's crazy. No one knew those words.
You're a great philosopher, a great thinker about life, and that comes out in much of your writing. And you've run as an independent, haven't you, for office in the States a few times?
I ran for the U.S. Senate. They didn't know what to do. And I started getting on radio without paying radio. They didn't know what to do. And I fell in love with Cuba, and I don't understand my country. Why would you put an embargo on them? You know how you end the embargo? You trade with them. It would be over in an hour.
Well, it's very interesting, actually. The more people trade with each other, the less likely they are ever to want to fight each other. And that's absolutely right.
I give, you give. Yeah.
When you look at America, I'm arguing that now about the Ukraine. I'm arguing that we need to have a proper negotiation.
The name?
No, I don't. Go on.
It means borderland. There was no Ukraine until 1991. That's the end of the Russian Empire. It's the end of the Ottoman Turk Empire and the Holy Roman Empire, which wasn't holy, it wasn't Roman, and it wasn't an empire, right? You had all these people sitting there, and they became nationalities. This one hated that one hated this one, and they started killing each other, not understanding you're the same. You may have different cultures. You're the same people.
No, I want us to have a proper negotiated settlement. When you look at America...
By the way, I would bet on it.
Yeah, I pray so. When you look at America today, as a last thought from you, big divisions in America. The left and right loathing each other in a way that we haven't known. An increasing lack of respect for the fact someone's got a different opinion. Cancel culture, all of this.
All of it.
Can that pendulum swing back, Stephen?
I believe so. And I will do everything I can. I've lived all over the world. I put out all the African music, all the South American music. I lived with the Native Indians, and I put out their ceremonies and chants. All I've ever learned is we're all the same. We're all looking for something. And if we ever learned how to get along together, we can make this place the heaven that it could be, living in physical form.